The new GM driving forward with the commitment to customers, cars, and culture. That message a short time ago from CEO Fritz Henderson as his company exits bankruptcy. All right, joining me to examine the new GM, CNN's Stephanie Elam, live at the New York Stock Exchange. Stephanie, good to see you. Automotive analyst Lauren Fix. We got to turn your microphone up just a little bit. Lauren Fix with us from Buffalo. Thanks, Otis. Bring in Lauren Fix, and Neil Bodette is joining us. Neil, as you know, is the Wall Street Journal's Detroit bureau chief. Neil, good to see you. Lauren, good to talk to you. All right, let's work through this.
Thank you.
Fritz Henderson announcing that GM is emerging from bankruptcy. Okay, we get that. Let me start with you, Neil. Did you hear anything in the plan that you believe will lead the new GM to profitability?
Well, no. At this level where the market is now, we're selling at a rate of about 10 million cars a year. Really nobody in the United States is making money. So, no, that's not going to do it. What GM will need to make money is for the economy to come back and for the auto market to get from 10 million up to closer to 12, 13, maybe even above 13 million to start making money. Yeah. But Henderson is talking about a cultural change that is a very, very important move for the company.
What's his argument? What's that cultural change that he was talking about this morning?
Well, you know, if you go back to the 50s and 60s, GM was a really hot company. They were the largest company in the world. At one time, were the most profitable, and people looked at GM the way people look at Toyota or Microsoft or Google today, and they were risk takers. Remember, this is the company that invented tail fins.
Right.
Came up with a small block V8. They took a lot of chances. Henderson wants to get back to that. In the last 10 years or so, GM became a very conservative, very risk-averse company, and he wants them to be more daring in the way they run the company.
And Lauren, weigh in here. What did you hear this morning? Anything encouraging from Fritz Henderson? And how soon did he articulate a plan to you that'll lead the company back to profitability?
Well, I think it's going to be a big challenge. You're looking at $48 billion in debt, which they claim they want to pay back in the next few years.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. They're talking about 10 new models to be coming out in the U.S. and 17 additional will be worldwide. So there should be some additional product. I'm curious what the product's going to be. I'm really concerned about the government being involved, even though they claim they're not going to be involved. I mean, look at, they're saying green cars and we're going to have better fuel economy, but the cost of gas continues to drop. Jobs are being cut. There's another 4,000 jobs, salary jobs, going to be cut at General Motors. You start adding that up, and it gets to be a lot. I mean, these are things that consumers won't buy cars if they don't have money. And then even with the cash for clunkers, it's still not going to help consumers necessarily buy GM cars.
Whoa, well, wait a minute. Oh, well, I'm going to get to cash for clunkers in a minute, but you mentioned something that I want to jump on right away. Lauren, let me start with you, and then Neil, I'll come to you with the same question. Is Fritz Henderson, you talked about who's going to run the company, is Fritz Henderson the man for the new GM? Look, my understanding is he is a career GM executive with virtually the identical career path and trajectory as Rick Wagner, who's gone now. Is the old guy, pardon me, the right guy for the new GM? Sorry.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I guess you got to have someone involved in the company who knows something about automotive. Traditionally, any company who brings in a bunch of outsiders, and that includes Mr. Whitaker, who's coming in, he's a very smart man. But, you know, if you don't know the auto industry, it's going to be really hard to operate in the auto industry. And this has traditionally happened. I can think of 3 or 4 companies, including a few right now, where they've brought in outsiders, and they've cleaned house and cleaned out everyone, brought in their little people and the staff, and it hasn't worked. So I think you need to have Fritz, or at least someone who's got some automotive experience, to get involved, to say, listen, this is what we've done in the past, it hasn't worked, and I'm willing to make some change. And he seems like he's the man.
Okay, and very quickly, I just want to remind folks of what they're seeing in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. Obviously, this is President Obama meeting with Pope Benedict XVI. Of course, we will be following this story throughout the morning as the president wraps up his visit to Rome, to Italy for the G8 summit, and then makes his way to Ghana. Neil, to you now, is Fritz Henderson the man to run the new GM?
Well, I think it's important to note, while he is a GM lifer, he's a very different person than Rick Wagner, who was the CEO who led GM to this point of filing bankruptcy. And the big key is the board. The board is being reconstituted. Ed Whitaker, former AT&T executive, is now the chairman. And there are several other new board members appointed by the U.S. government and others. And the board is the key. In the past, the GM board was very passive, rarely challenged executives, rarely took a skeptical view. This new board is going to be very tough on Fritz Henderson.
Yeah.
If he comes out with a projection that they're going to keep 20% market share, the board will probably challenge him, but prove it. What happens if it goes below 20%? That kind of challenging from the board was not happening before.
Okay, Lauren, brass tacks, nuts and bolts here. I've heard people say that, you know, the government and all of this, the government didn't save GM. The government didn't build or sell a car. The government didn't save a job. What's your take on that? That the government didn't save GM?
I don't think that, I think that it turned out to be a lot more than President Obama and the Automotive Task Force even planned. I think their initial thought was they're too big to fail. But in reality, when you look back at the big picture and how many people lost their jobs and the amount of people that are unemployed in Detroit and across Michigan State and across the country that are being affected by this, everybody's being affected by it. And it sounds to me that they could have had other plans, and I don't think that getting the government to own 60% of a company where they don't build cars, they haven't built a product in their entire life, just scares the heck out of me.
And Neil, last one to you, is the new Cash for Clunkers plan. Is this a Buy American plan? And secondly, could it be the hidden stimulus that saves the U.S. auto industry?
It's not a Buy American plan. You can turn in a clunker, an old car, and buy a new Toyota or Honda.
But isn't it clear this administration wants you to buy something from GM and from Chrysler and from Ford? Well, maybe not so much Chrysler, but certainly Ford.
Well, you can buy American, or you can buy the foreign-owned nameplates as well.
Sure,
Honda
sure.
is available. All those foreign vehicles that meet the fuel economy requirements are available for the plan. It's not specifically targeted for Detroit alone. And whether it will save the auto industry, I think it'll ease the pain, but the real big question is that the overall economy. Cash for clunkers may help companies get through this tough period, but it's not going to bring anybody back to life like GM or Chrysler.
Yeah, and Lauren, I was thinking about Chrysler. I don't know how much Fiat owns. Does Fiat own Chrysler now?
20%.
Well,
20%?
yeah.
Okay, so I guess you would take this money and conceivably buy Chrysler cars as well. What are your thoughts on it? Is it a stimulus plan that potentially could save the auto industry?
I'm not a huge fan of the Cash for Clunkers plan. I think for a multitude of reasons. First off, those people that are eliminated from this plan are those people that have always leased cars. You're not eligible. Right. Those people that have said, you know what, I'm always going to buy a hybrid. I'm going to take really good care of my car. I'm going to work with the environment and buy green cars. You're not eligible. And the thing is, then there's those people that are unemployed that aren't eligible because they can't afford to finance another car and then have higher insurance payments, which is how we got here in the first place.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and then what it also does is it kills the used car market, because if I have an older car and I want to trade it in on a newer car, and you know, I could have a really old piece of junk and trade it in toward a Nissan Skyline, which is like a sports car,
right,
and that does qualify, or I could go buy a Kia. So, right. I mean, you don't know. So either way, now you take the used car market that has to be destroyed, and now there's less cars in that market, which causes the used cars market prices to rise. And those people that can't afford new cars, those used car prices are going to go up. So that doesn't help them either.
All right, let's wrap it there, leave it there. I want to get to some of these pictures from the Vatican. Neil, good to see you. Lauren, as always, great to talk to you.
Thank you, Tony.